You're listening to The Route, a sports talk podcast. On Facebook.com/The Route 2 and on Twitter at @the_Route 2.
And welcome into a special segment of The Route here. We're going to just be calling this Husker Football Talk because we're kind of based in Lincoln, and it's a little bit difficult for people to ignore Husker football in this town, particularly us, since Brent, of course, is the KRNU sports director, and he heads Husker Countdown and covers it. And, of course, I used to do his job the last 2 years, so it's a little bit difficult not to do it. So we thought we might as well, just get the old delay of game band back together and talk Husker football because, we kind of don't have time in our regular hour-long show. So, without further ado,
it's time now to bring in the Nebraska insider of all Nebraska insiders, the insider known as Devon Kleich.
Ah, yes, Mr. Devon Kleich.
Oh, yeah. Back in black, baby.
Oh, yes.
Or red.
The insider of all insiders, as the intro just, of course, said. And we, when I was in charge of delay of game, we'd always bring Devon on last fall to give us a Husker football preview and talk about Nebraska because you are the videographer for the team. You see everything that almost nobody else sees, at least outside of when media times are allowed.
Yep.
So we decided, you know what? Why not have Devon on every week to discuss Husker football in a completely separate segment? This week, of course, believe it or not, gentlemen, it is Husker football week. The first game of the regular season begins this upcoming Saturday, and it's kind of incredible that we are that close to the season
It's almost scary.
It's the best week of the year besides my birthday week.
Yeah.
Best week of the year.
There you go.
A birthday week?
Week, not day.
You get the whole week?
He gets the week
Yeah.
because he's Devon Kleich.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Hey.
But anyway, and that means you've got to start preparing for your stuff on KRNU
That's right.
this week.
We're the sports staff. We're meeting tomorrow for the first time. We'll meet together with our new members and go over things for the first week. And kind of nerve-wracking that it's already here. You think, boy, well, have you kept up with everything? There's so many storylines for this first game. You're playing BYU. Maybe a Heisman candidate and their quarterback, and you're missing how many players due to injury, suspensions, things like that. And on the flip side, BYU's probably got it worse off than Nebraska. They've got, seems like, I don't know what the count is up to now, how many players
somewhere
have got
around
suspended.
15, I believe.
15, 16 in there.
That doesn't include players that are gone.
Yeah, right.
They had lost our running back. He's gone. He'll come back next year.
Yeah.
Took a year off. And their tight end, I believe, is gone, too, after a non-contact injury. So they're really troubling
both
for
teams
BYU.
are pretty depleted, because Nebraska doesn't have nearly all their best players. Obviously, DeMornay, he's out, and he's the biggest part of the offense probably is what they had planned for him to be, and now you take him away. This game against BYU, which you think, well, okay, it's kind of a tough opener compared to some previous years.
Oh, yeah, toughest by far in 30 years.
Right. Well, actually, Nebraska 29-0 in their openers, and so now a game against BYU, which, it's tough, but you think, well, it should be able to beat BYU now. Not so sure.
And what I want to...
Could they lose?
Yeah, and what I want to do with this segment here first, before we go into this weekend's game and then break down kind of the rest of the season, preview that, I want to preview both sides of the ball. Devon, you've seen all the practices and stuff, and you can tell us how things have gone up to this point in the season. But also, more importantly, what I want to do is kind of address this narrative that Nebraska could go 7-5, 8-4 this season, struggled to try and get to 9 wins, which is what Husker fans wanted. Remember, Bo Pelini had done it the previous 7 years that he was here: 8-4, 9-3, 10-3, 10-4, 9-4. Those different records. But he had always been consistent with that. And now people are saying, "Oh well, Nebraska could go 7-5, 8-4," and it's how? Because, and I asked the question how, because of personnel that is on this team. I want to start with the defense.
Okay.
Because we discussed this the other day.
We did.
And I want to start with the defense. You are returning at almost every single position players that have at least 2 years, if not more, of experience, 2 years worth of experience or more at corner, safeties, D-line, linebackers, special guys like nickelback spots. That, first of all, doesn't translate to me that Nebraska would struggle this year if the defense is going to be their strength of this team. Because, again, you have a front four that has so much experience. It's going to really be a problem for teams like BYU, like Miami, that has a completely brand new offensive line for Brad Kaya. I think Wisconsin is kind of in that same boat with their offensive line. A couple of other offensive lines in the Big Ten that I'm not thinking about, and we'll get to some of these teams later. But I think, Devon, that Nebraska is going to win more than 8 games. I think 9 games, they have the potential to win 10 games because of their defense. Am I right? Do I have substance enough to where I can be backed up by saying Nebraska's defense will carry them and carry them a lot more than I think people are giving them credit for?
Oh, yeah. Nebraska's defense is definitely going to carry them through, especially those first couple games. You know, I can sit here and tell you that the offense has really improved, but until they've played in that first couple games, I can't really say that because I want to see them in action against someone that's not Nebraska's defense. And, you know, when you're in practice, they're going to set aside plays that are specifically to focus on the offense. They'll set aside plays that are specifically focused on the defense. And I can't really judge when I'm filming up there, is this play for the offense? Is this play for the defense? I don't know. They break it up into periods. That kind of helps. So I can't really make a judgment on the offense. But the defense, when they would do good on good, the one offense versus the one defense, that defense looked spectacular. They looked like they haven't missed a beat. Yeah, we have a weak spot at the linebacker position and probably one of the outside linebacker positions because we got Michael Rose-Ivy, who's going to play one of them. Then you'll have Josh Banderas playing the other. Now, you're going to have a young guy step up and play that other one. Could be Marcus Newby. It could be Ferguson, but he's probably going to play more middle linebacker. But you have a couple of young guys that can step up and play that position. But you have to look at it in the fact that Nebraska's defense probably hasn't missed a beat since the end of the season. They looked pretty good closing out the season, especially in a game where Bo got fired before the bowl game.
It was the Barney Cotton game.
And then the Barney Cotton game. And they did not play bad on both sides of the ball. They played rather good for Barney Cotton against USC out there in California. But the defensive line, you get rid of Randy Gregory as he goes to the NFL. You put Jack Gangwish, who played quite a bit towards the end of the season because of injuries by Randy. So there is some chemistry between those 4 guys up front. And they are some big guys. Malik Collins could be a first-round draft pick in the NFL.
And you have guys behind those front 4 starters that are just as good.
Exactly.
Kevin Williams, we saw him just go nuts in that Northwestern game, Brent, when we went to Evanston. Right. He's absolutely amazing. Kevin Maurice, another guy who's done very well in the past in filling in a backup spot. I was thinking of somebody else. I can't. Maybe that's all there was. But those 2 for sure.
People were sad to see Randy Gregory go, but it's from what I've been hearing from people who've been in practices and stuff, writers and people like that. Malik Collins is like the next Sue. He's probably better than Randy Gregory was. At least his ceiling might even be higher than what Randy Gregory was. And we all saw how good Gregory was in this last season. You know, he got injured, and then people were double teaming him and stuff. So his numbers fell. He's still a really talented player. That's why he went high in the draft. But Malik Collins, they say, could be even better. Yeah. So I don't know how Nebraska keeps just putting these guys in there.
It's being able to develop those guys at those key positions.
Right.
And defensive line is one of the biggest positions for Nebraska.
And we haven't even addressed Greg McMullen and Vincent Valentine.
Right.
Again, that is a dangerous front four. I put that front four up against any
Almost
team
anyone,
in
yeah,
college
anyone
football.
in the country.
Yeah.
The thing that people
Hard to
are
think of a
worried
better
about,
one.
you look at that front line and they are good, really good. But
And
you
they
look-
have so much experience,
and
too.
the thing that worries Nebraska fans, and I know it does, is that the three guys behind them at the linebacker positions, Michael Royce-Ivy didn't play at all last year because of an injury. Josh Banderas did not. He struggled last year. He did. He struggled last year throughout the season. And now you got to throw in a young guy who's never had a start at that other outside linebacker position.
Outside of Marcus Newby.
Yeah, but Marcus hasn't started, though. So, but he's had playing time.
Exactly, yeah.
But he's also been to the point where he was a linebacker last year, went to defensive line, and now they moved him back to linebacker because they need him at linebacker.
Right.
And that's the part that Nebraska fans want to see, but you'll see Nebraska probably run a lot of nickel defense and throw Josh Kalu in there and take out that third linebacker. And you got guys like Nate Gary, team captain this year.
We haven't even gotten to the secondary yet.
He unreal safety. He's a big guy from Sioux Falls. He's really coming to his own in his first couple of years at Nebraska. And then you got guys like Josh Kalu, who could play the nickel. You got Jonathan Rose. Any of those cornerbacks.
Daniel Davey. Byerson Cockrell.
Yeah.
And Cockrell
Just throw him in there.
He'll probably play that other safety position because those guys are good. And this defense is going to be really hard to stop. And that's why I think that this defense is going to have to carry them through it. But Nebraska is going to be a good situation.
Charles Jackson. We totally forgot about Charles Jackson.
Yep, Jackson. He's playing behind him. And I feel for that kid because had so many injuries throughout his career that have kept him out. And I hope he can get on the field this year and play. Because if this defense plays like I think they can and other people who've been to practice think they can, if that offense can step up, it's going to be a really good team Mike Riley has in his first year. And the thing that people forget about, they're saying, like you said, saying 7-5, 8-4. Nebraska has one of the most talented teams in the Big Ten. Mike Riley's never had this at Oregon State at all.
Yeah, right. And you can easily put up this team against any Big Ten West opponent, and you will have a good game because, again, the Mike Riley factor. It's Mike Riley with Nebraska's it's a Pac-12 mindset in Mike Riley and getting him a team that can really put his ideas and his coaching ability, take it to the next level. Because Bo Pelini couldn't really do that. Mike Riley could. He didn't possess the talent. You take those two together, you've got it right now. That's why I think people are kind of underselling Nebraska this year. And I don't truly... I mean, yeah, I get it. Riley, new head coach, new coaching staff, new scheme, new plays. But you can't tell me that it's going to take an entire season for an experienced football team like Nebraska to redevelop themselves and adjust and get used to that.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's not.
I mean,
it's not going to happen.
I understand the offense probably, but it can't be that different on defense.
No.
It can't be.
You know, Mark Banker, I love that guy. I love talking to him. Such an intelligent guy. He knows what he's doing on defense. It might be a little bit something different than Nebraska doing. They're going to play full out, get out there, go and smack some people kind of defense. Let those guys run wild, but keep it controlled as well to an extent. But he's going to let those guys go out there and hit them hard. Nebraska hasn't let their D-line be a little bit more free, let their linebackers be a little bit more free, and it's going to benefit them, I think, here towards the end of the season, especially since they have that bye week in November.
And we just talked about, you brought up the offense, and I want to move to that now with, we know Tommy Armstrong, quarterback, simple as that. Well, I want to talk about him because you told me in practice that he's developing to a level that he has not reached in previous years with Bo Pelini. And immediately when you told me that, I said, it's because there is a quarterback's coach.
Yeah.
That is crucial. And now Nebraska has one. And now we're seeing Tommy Armstrong develop in practice before everybody's eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's last year, of course, the guy who really worked with the quarterbacks was Joe Gans. Joe Gans played pretty well here at Nebraska as a quarterback, but he just doesn't have that experience to coach someone like Tommy, those young kids. You see Joe try and teach those guys, and he's a pretty young guy himself, so I think that, a quarterback like Tommy and the others look at him as more of a friend than as a coach because he's so young.
Yeah.
But now that you have Mike Riley here, who has developed many quarterbacks at a school that doesn't get very many good recruits at Oregon State.
They have to fight for what they want to get.
And then on top of that, you bring in Danny Langsdorf, who worked with Eli Manning at the New York Giants. Not saying Eli's that good. I know he's not that good, but he's still a good quarterback.
Right.
And having that experience working with Eli, Tommy's going to look at him like, wow, he's worked with NFL talent. A guy that's won 2 Super Bowls.
Right.
And that's going to benefit Tommy. And Tommy, I don't know if he's bought in, but it looks like he's bought in. And he's really taking control of the offense. He's making sure everyone knows their assignments. Learning a new playbook is difficult, especially in a year, but they've made the effort to do that. And that's why I think a couple of games is going to let them get used to the new play calling and all that stuff, the different style that hopefully any of them didn't bring. Give them a couple games, and then you'll see what Nebraska's offense really has, especially going into Miami.
Well, that seemed to be the problem for Tommy Armstrong last season. It wasn't really a lack of talent. It was more just, his reads and stuff, getting the right play. Well, and there was the whole debate about when plays should be called and what plays should be called when and things like that. I don't know. We'll see with the new offensive coordinator how that all works out. But, and going back to what you said about like Eli Manning and stuff, I think they're pretty similar. Eli Manning, no, he's not a Drew Brees or Aaron Rodgers or Peyton Manning type in the NFL, but neither is Tommy Armstrong. He's not one of the top college quarterbacks in the nation or anything. He's good, but they don't need him to pass for 400 yards a game like those SEC quarterbacks and the Big 12 quarterbacks and stuff. Most of that has to do with the fact that you got like 5 running backs who could start most places or be a backup in most places. So, like you said, two games. My only worry is that, especially with BYU, if they're going to need to have it more locked down, or if, they can't really afford to learn in that first game, if they just need to know it in order to win that game, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that in a minute. I want to move to now the running back position, because that's where there's a lot of question marks. Same with the offensive line, too. Now, wide receivers, let's get to the wide receivers really quickly first, because that's a situation where, yes, you lose DeMornay Pearson-L. I understand how big that is.
Big loss.
But let me just list off who else is at wide receiver that you can rely on. Tariq Allen, Sam Birch, Lane Hovey, Alonzo Moore, Brandon Riley, Jamal Turner, Jordan Westerkamp. That's without DeMornay Pearson-L in there now. You're still having to put experienced guys in there, and they're still having to fight for spots.
Yeah.
Imagine if DeMornay Pearson-L was there. You have more battling for position going on. But with Pearson-L out of there, that's a big blow, but it doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're scrambling to put wide receivers into the ball game who haven't played at the college level before.
Right.
Sam Birch missed all of last season. After the first season, he had done some pretty great things for Nebraska.
Yeah.
Brandon Riley came on strong towards the end of last season. Jamal Turner, if he can avoid the injury bug, can be almost as good as DeMornay Pearson-L.
Right.
Jordan Westerkamp speaks for himself, so I don't need to go there. And Tariq Allen and Alonzo Moore, you're still waiting for them to step up and get to that level of prominence, but they have the ability, especially Alonzo Mourning.
I don't know if reliable is the word I'd use for Nebraska wide receivers. They do have some experience and stuff, and Alonzo Moore's made some big plays, like in that Michigan State game. Of course, the drop, but wish he would have made one more big play, but he didn't. So I don't know if reliable is the word I use. I'm a little more worried, I guess, about the wide receivers. I think that they have a lot of guys there. But I think, if you look at your team and you think, okay, where are my locks? Where are my guys? Tommy Armstrong, quarterback. Okay, that's a lock. He's not moving. Like when you had Amir Abdullah, he wasn't moving. When you have guys like that, you look around at your locks, and really other than at the wide receiver position, DeMornay, he was going to be a lock, and Westerkamp. But after that, where really can you look and say, well, yeah, this guy is only going to come out when he needs a breather? Or,
say Brandon Riley. I can
really?
I probably confidently say Brandon Riley after how well he played towards the end of last season and how really reliable he became. I would say he probably is a lock.
Yeah, well, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. And some guys, they just haven't had their shot yet, and they're talented players, and they will be.
Or in Jamal Turner's case, he's been consistently hurt.
Injured. Now, see, if he's going to be healthy, then he's your other lock.
Exactly.
But after Brandon Riley, especially after him, I get worried. Yeah. That's just me.
I think it comes down to that group right there of wide receivers staying healthy throughout the year, because that's what's plagued that wide receiver position. That's why they got their shot to be that guy to step up. Yeah. It's because they've been hurt. Sam Birch, Jamal Turner,
Brandon
Riley, they all have been hurt. Sam Birch, hopefully to come back, because he did have that knee operation that they came out to talk about, but they said he should be back for the first week of the season. DeMornay, I thought when DeMornay got hurt, it's a big loss for Nebraska. I think it's a bigger loss in the special games or special teams.
Yeah, definitely.
Part of the game than it is the offense, because Nebraska, like we said, does have those wide receivers. Stanley Morgan, I think that kid could be one of the best freshmen in the Big Ten. I really like Stanley Morgan. He's really impressed me throughout fall camp. But DeMornay, when he came here last year, no one really knew who DeMornay Pearsonell was.
No, I had no idea.
When he started returning kicks and returning punts, people are like, wow, this kid could be something special. And that's why, and on offense, he was good. He made some really nice catches, but he wasn't as flashy.
Good wide receiver 2 or 3.
People look for DeMornay when he's going to go return a punt.
Right.
Especially like that game at Michigan State. He really is going to be a loss for Nebraska, but that doesn't mean anything. Before that, you had Westerkamp returning punts.
Yeah.
And Westerkamp can do that just fine. As long as we can hang on to the ball, be consistent on offense, be consistent on the defensive side of the ball, be consistent in special teams where you have guys like Westerkamp probably now returning kicks.
With a special teams coordinator.
An actual special teams coordinator, who's probably one of the best in the country.
Exactly.
The key word for Nebraska this year is being consistent. If you are consistent at those positions, those key positions where Nebraska has not had any consistency in a long, long time, Nebraska will be just fine, and they could win against almost anyone in the country.
Yeah. Well, speaking of special teams and consistency, the kickers. Wow.
Yeah.
But I've heard some good things.
Yeah.
Sam Foltz. We already know Sam Foltz is amazing.
Yeah.
Probably he could be an NFL punter.
Yeah.
Like, he's that good.
Well, that's what I've heard.
I was watching him in practice the other day, and he was standing on the goal line, and he was punting him in the air to the 30-yard line. The opposite 30-yard
Like a 70-yard punt in the air?
In the air.
Yeah. That's incredible.
That has, and he came to Nebraska. I'm going to be a wide receiver. I'm going to be on offense catching footballs as a walk-on. Then they're like, we need someone to kick.
Right.
He stepped up right away, and they're like, wow, this kid could be something special too. And he has turned out. And now Drew Brown has a year under his belt. Wasn't that flashy as a kicker. Not that kickers are flashy in the first place. But Drew Brown has been relatively consistent.
In practice. Yeah.
And that's what Nebraska's looking for, is being consistent
at
all those positions. And that's what's going to benefit them in the long run, especially with having 10 straight games without a bye week.
I want to go to this offensive line now before we go to the running backs, because that is the other area of concern that I know that I have. Now, you've got some guys returning that have experience. You have Ryan Reeves at the center position, our boy PT, Paul Thurston, backing him up. You've got Zach Stirrup. He's got experience there. Alex Lewis, Chongo Condolo. Givens Price, as you told me, Devon, he's moved to the defensive side of the ball, so kind of a loss a little bit on the O-line, but Matt Finnan as well has some playing time. Everybody else, though, is new and hasn't had playing time at the college level. Mm-hmm. How concerned should Husker fans be with the lack of I guess,
depth at those positions?
I guess more like experience and throwing their confidence to the offensive line and knowing that they'll get their job done.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I guess the way I said it is not really correct either. There is depth there. You're right. It's the experience factor that, you got to have a guy come in who never even thought about playing at Nebraska until Mike Riley started recruiting him, and that's Jalen Barnett. He's probably going to redshirt this year. Just so Nebraska has him for those 4 years. They're going to develop that kid. He's a very good offensive guard, and he will be when he gets his turn to play. But you look at guys like Dylan Utter, just earned himself a scholarship after being a walk-on, and he was the starting left guard. He was taking the snaps with the ones. That's big for Nebraska to have those guys that are giving that effort. They're not getting paid to go to school. They're paying their way to go to school, but also to play at the University of Nebraska.
Right.
And Dylan Nutter was one of those guys, and he finally got his scholarship. And he's going to be big for Nebraska. You got Alex Lewis. If he can cut down on his penalties, which seem to become the laughing stock of the internet, I would say. A couple of those penalties falling backwards. Yeah. But that's something that he's worked on. Offensive line, I don't think has committed that many penalties, honestly, all year.
Jake Cotton and Alex Lewis, the penalty guys.
Yeah,
the penalty
on the left side
of
the offensive line.
Oh, boy.
But now you insert a couple of new guys. Chongo, he's up there, probably as the number one guard on the right side. And then you got Stirrup and Nick Gates. Nick Gates, I believe, is a redshirt freshman. And those two have been kind of splitting some time at that right guard position, but if I had to say, I'd give that notch to Nick Gates because he has really stepped up when they're having troubles, because Stirrup's been injured quite a bit as well.
Right.
Throughout his career at Nebraska, he's really stepped up as a young guy, really learned how to make his correct read, who he's blocking, what calls to make on the offensive line. If there's a blitz coming, that's going to be big for Nebraska. If these young guys and the few older guys can, really build a nice chemistry between each other. Mm-hmm. And like I said, be consistent on the offensive line. Give Tommy some time in the pocket, and that's been one of the issues the last few years is Tommy has not had time in the pocket.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He could be a really good quarterback. That could be a really good offensive line. Mm-hmm. And with the running backs that you have behind you, if you make those blocks, they are going to get downfield.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why... there's always that concern. There's always going to be that concern for Nebraska at the offensive line position until we see otherwise. But I'm really looking forward to this season. The offense, I think, overall has looked really good. Tommy's really impressed me. Offensive line has looked rather decent. Mike Cavanaugh, I think, a great offensive line coach. Great recruiter. He's going to do big things for Nebraska as long as he's here. And then the running back position, you got... seems like 20 running backs that could just step in and
it's incredible. It's just like defensive linemen. But
and you would think that some of these guys would be like, there's 5 guys ahead of me. Why would I want to be here? Why don't I transfer somewhere else? Which we've had that in the past.
Right.
Well, Nebraska's always had some really good running backs. Mm-hmm. King Frazier, he left and went to North Dakota State.
Yep.
Those guys could have been really good running backs, but these guys want to stick around and play football at the University of Nebraska because they love it. Nebraska is a traditional powerhouse Not in the last probably 10 years.
Right.
But they have been that traditional power, and Nebraska can get back to that. That's depending on if they're consistent, if Mike Riley's offense works for Nebraska, if it works for these players that he is recruiting. I give him a couple years, but these guys, I think you can't go wrong with saying they win 9 games or more.
And we'll get to that in just a moment. Quickly, Monty Cross, Terrell Newby, some of your leading running backs. You've been telling me about Mikhail Wilbon battling, and he could be...
he's been apparently a bright spot.
Exactly, yeah. So that's 3. Don't forget Adam Taylor. Certainly a possibility there, too. Can't leave out the tight ends, and you've got basically 3 solid tight ends battling for 1 spot, maybe 2. Ethan Carter, Sam Cotton, Trey Foster, all really, really... solid tight ends, and I was trying to think of the word there, like not stealth, but they're just really solid up front at the tight end position, those 3 are.
Yeah, nothing stealthy about a tight end.
Exactly, yeah. I don't know why I thought about that.
Especially not those guys.
Exactly.
You're going to know where they are.
All right, finally, let's get to the schedule. I'm going to keep track because that's, I kind of want to make sure that we go through this, not just getting through and talking about the schedule ahead, but also deciding, win or loss here. Now, BYU, Taysom Hill, first game back since a very devastating, almost career-ending injury.
Yeah. Will he be the
has
same?
15 other players around him that are suspended because of the Memphis Bowl game that meant nothing, and a couple of other things that are going on out there in Provo. So with that said, I can't really find enough reasoning to believe that Nebraska would lose a home opener with 90,000 plus screaming fans there, witnessing the first game of a new head coach on a Saturday afternoon against a team that's depleted and a quarterback that's coming back from an injury, going up against probably one of the best defenses, most underrated defense, I think, in all of college football.
Yeah.
So are we in agreement Nebraska probably wins that game right there?
Oh, yeah.
Nebraska probably wins, yeah. I mean, the only reason I think it's much of a question is because Nebraska is almost as depleted as they are. And it's really just kind of weighing...
How, though?
Well,
Pearson L injury, okay.
Yeah.
You lose Abdullah, Bell, Gregory, I'm missing somebody else.
And how many players are suspended now? What's the suspension count for Nebraska?
I thought it was just 5. And Mike
just
Riley
5? Yeah, and then you got injuries. You're looking at 10, 12 players here.
It's not that. It can't be that bad, though. Or am I just feeling too confident here?
I think what it is we're not really... This is Mike Riley's first actual game as being head coach in Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see close to 95,000 fans show up at Memorial Stadium. And
Changing the guard game.
I think that is what wins Nebraska the game, is these fans showing up to see Mike Riley coach and play this game. Yeah, Nebraska fans don't see this as the easy win. We haven't had this tough of a game on opening day in almost 30 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Nebraska finally gets that tough game at home to open up the season. And, I just look at the crowd winning the game for Nebraska on top of some stellar defense by the Huskers. So,
But don't get me wrong. I don't think we're going to go out there and Nebraska's going to lose, by double digits or something like that. I just don't think it's going to be as easy as if, even if both teams were fully loaded, I still think Nebraska has a much bigger edge. It's the fact that Nebraska's not, it's more that Nebraska's not as strong as they could be, more so than anything BYU has. It's more like, all things equal, both teams completely healthy. Both teams have all their players. I think Nebraska wins by 2 touchdowns.
Oh,
I think Nebraska scores at least 35 points.
It's certainly possible.
That defense. So.
South Alabama, I'd be shocked if that was even a game.
Yeah.
Prime time on BTN. So
don't look down on them. We look down on McNeese State.
Yeah, that's true.
I was the first one.
True.
I'm not joking. Last year, I was up in the 7th floor Memorial Stadium, and we take 5 cards with us, SD cards, to film. One for each quarter and an extra one just in case. I had 4 cards with me. I go, wow, I hope this game doesn't go to overtime because I don't have an extra card.
Yeah.
And of
Amir
course,
Abdullah saved your job.
Amir Abdullah saved my life because I didn't have an extra card to do it. So I wouldn't look down on South Alabama, but I don't see Nebraska it being that close against South Alabama.
Yeah. No, it's
Finally, or not finally, next up, I should say, the first home game, or the first road game, rather, for the Huskers against Miami. Now, Miami is also depleted.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Their
Big
O-line
time.
is almost gone. They have no experienced running back. They have two wide receivers that were Brad Kaya's weapons are gone.
Yep.
The only thing that Miami really has is maybe some good players on defense and Brad Kaya. And I'm telling you what, I don't know how good or quick Al Golden is at rebuilding teams, but his history record has not been that good in the past few years at rebuilding things at Miami. Plus, also, doesn't he have like a quarterback controversy too with some of those quarterbacks that got hurt? He had like 2 injuries. One got tossed, or one got suspended for the whole year and then left. I mean, it's but
a mess down there.
The main thing to me is no dangerous running back, no dangerous wide receivers, and a brand new O-line.
Yeah.
I mean, where's the threat offensively in that?
That's how Miami has been since the dawn of time. They have had their highs where they're the best team in college football. They win national championships. They win I don't know how many games in a row, and they dominate for a decade. And then they go into these steep declines where they're, kind of like a bottom feeder. And I think they're at that time now, obviously, because you look at that team, like you said, last year they had they had some NFL talent. Duke Johnson. I can't think of the linebacker. Perryman, both going to be probably standout rookies in their first seasons in the NFL and stuff. But, now, and it's Brad Kaya. I can't even name another offensive player for Miami.
I can't either.
Yeah, let alone a defense. I mean, it's just like they're like a complete non-factor. So, yeah, the only worry about that game is, of course, that's on the road. And it's in Miami, and things happen.
First road game for Mike Riley in Nebraska.
Yep. And it's just like,
But this defense, particularly, should be used to it.
I'm
Nebraska, that is.
Yeah, I'm more confident that Nebraska is going to win that game than BYU.
Really? Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I think Nebraska's a lot more healthy going into that game than they are this first game.
Yeah.
Especially on the defensive side of the ball. Those guys they finally get into the thick of things where they're playing a game every weekend, and then they're like, wow, we got to go play Miami, who we've had a rivalry with forever.
Right.
And now this defense is going to get excited, go down and play. I believe they're playing in Dolphin Stadium. I think
so, yeah.
But play down there, and they are going to, it's just going to be one of the best games that you'll watch that night. It's a 2:30 game, and it'll probably be the best game of the day.
I'm still going to mark it down as a win.
I'm saying it's a win.
I think Nebraska can win.
I'm saying it's a win.
No, I definitely think it's a win.
Okay, so then Nebraska after that comes back Southern Miss at the end of September. I think that's probably going to be a win.
I hope so.
I think
you're going to have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go do Husker Countdown and get that show ready.
That's
11 a.m. game.
11 a.m., not even 11:30.
Oh,
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
I think they have a little bit of a struggle. I think they have a little hangover from the week before. Nebraska will. So you got to watch out for Southern Miss. But I don't think it'll be that bad because Southern Miss has been, I hate to say it this way, but kind of a dumpster fire lately. I mean, they have, though. They had a season where they won 11 games, and then ever since they've been just slowly going downhill, and then someone lit the match.
Yeah.
So
and now capitulation mode.
Watch out for Southern Miss just because it could be a little bit of a hangover game.
Yeah.
And
they always seem to hang tough for a quarter or two.
Yeah, and that's probably how it'll be, especially the first quarter.
Yep.
They'll probably score the first touchdown, honestly.
Yeah,
that typically happens to Nebraska. But I don't see Nebraska losing that game, and they will, I believe, go undefeated through the first
non-con,
non-conference games.
And then we go into Big Ten play.
Yeah.
Nebraska, Illinois in Champaign. Talk about a dumpster fire. Tim Beckman, see you later.
Where did that come from?
See you later.
Well, I guess
Illinois
obviously
finally just had enough.
Yeah, I'd been brewing for a while, but boy, I was still surprised.
Yeah.
When you see the headline, on the internet or on your phone or whatever. Whoa.
Yeah. So I'm marking that down as a win. I don't see any type of threat from Illinois.
Yeah, no.
And even if they were the Illinois of the last, few years where they can put up a fight against the teams, I don't even see them having a chance, even if they were exactly like that.
Yeah. And then we come to a little old team in red called Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So many factors in this game. First of all, it is in Lincoln at Memorial Stadium.
Hopefully it's a night game.
It is a revenge game. Yeah, time to be determined. It is a revenge game for Nebraska. There is no Melvin Gordon.
Right.
There are question marks once again surrounding Joel Stave and what in the world he's going to do. They have a new head coach. They are depleted on the O-line. They are missing some key defensive guys. And I think they're missing a couple of offensive guys as well. I'm mainly thinking at wide receiver, other than Melvin Gordon. So with that said, new head coach in the Big Ten Western Conference versus a new head coach in the Big Ten Western Conference. What are we thinking, Brent? I'll start with you.
Oh, this is just so scary. It doesn't seem like it matters which team is up the 1 year and which team is down. Nebraska a bit down last year, Wisconsin up a little bit with guys like Melvin Gordon. It always just seems like this is one of the toughest games, no matter what, against Wisconsin. It's not really a rivalry game, I don't think. I mean,
it's going to be a revenge game for Nebraska.
I think it's going to develop into that.
See, I agree, because each year it seems like, oh, that's the one where you're kind of on the edge of your seat, like which way is this going to go this year? Obviously, last year, revenge game is
talk about going two different directions in two different parts of the game.
Yeah.
You thought Nebraska was going to pull away up ahead 21-3, and then all of a sudden
smoked. Yeah,
it's what 51-27, 28 for final score.
400. Gordon sets the NCAA rushing record
for a
against
week.
that defense. Yeah,
for a week.
Yes, of course, he only held it for a week, but still. So, yes, I don't think they're as good as last year, but even a depleted Wisconsin line is still like one of the top offensive lines in the country. Because last year, I think they sent most of the offensive line to the NFL, and of course Melvin Gordon going in the first round. So, and he's got replacements behind him because they had
Corey Clement.
Talented.
Corey Clement is very good.
Yep. They've got talent
who also
behind
called
him.
Nebraska a flip phone.
Yeah, he does have some big talk going on up there.
Yeah, well, and he can back it up. Now I think Nebraska.
Well, he can. The question is, will he when he comes down here?
Exactly. Nebraska gets him at home now. It's in Lincoln. The defense is improved. We'll see how the offense is by that point in the season. Hopefully, they're clicking.
Guarantee you, Nate Gary's has this game marked on his calendar.
Oh, I'm sure
he's
does.
ready to have a redo in front of the hometown fans.
I'm sure his neck is just going to be straining.
Oh, yeah. You might see him light up Corey Clement a few times.
Yeah, well, we'll see. But Devin, do your thing. And I'm still debating on whether or not I want to call this a win or a loss.
Well, Nebraska is undefeated against Wisconsin at home since they joined the Big Ten. That does benefit them. But then again, Nebraska has played them close both times.
About those games.
Came back to beat them
the
very first game. That was the year we played Ohio State at home and beat them.
Right.
And then we played them 2 years later.
It was a year after.
No, wasn't it the same year?
It was a year after.
Was it the year after?
Yeah.
Ohio State and then Wisconsin.
Right? Ohio State first year in the Big Ten, Wisconsin second year in the Big Ten.
I thought we played them both the same year in the...
Nope. Back-to-back years.
Maybe we didn't. Anyways, we beat Wisconsin, we beat Ohio State, that's all that matters.
Right.
No, but we have played Wisconsin twice at home. Played them 3 times on the road, once in the Big Ten championship. No, twice on the road, once in the Big Ten championship game. Slaughtered every time. Every time at Wisconsin and Big Ten championship game.
Yep.
But Nebraska has been waiting for a game like this. Nebraska fans have been waiting for a game like this. They've been waiting for Bo to be gone for a game like this. And Nebraska is going to get in a dogfight with Wisconsin at home. And this is another game that I think the defense helps win. You won't see 408 rushing yards by a single player. on Nebraska defense.
Yeah.
They know that Melvin Gordon's gone. They know that Corey Clement talked trash about Nebraska. They know. And this is why that game is going to be a dogfight. And you could see it get chippy out there. Like Miami last year, it got chippy really bad. But I think that you look at that game, it could go either way. Mm-hmm. But I still think that Nebraska edges them at home because of the crowd.
Yeah.
That game will be like the Miami game last year.
It will be so electric. It'll be so electric in this
Especially
stadium.
if Nebraska is 5-0 going into that.
Right. I think that's the kind of the determining factor as well, is the fact that it's at home, because I think Wisconsin's offense will have a bit of an edge, but I think Nebraska's defense will have a pretty decent advantage over Wisconsin. So I think the determining factor will be the fact that it's at home, those intangible things. So I can see Nebraska eking out, something like a 31, 27, 28 type of thing, somewhere in there. So I'll say Nebraska this time.
All right. So Nebraska so far,
6-0.
and what we've predicted here, 6-0, and then they have to go up into the good old land of the lakes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Of the many 10,000 lakes in Minneapolis to take on Minnesota. And this, I think, this is the one I'm on the fence about. Because Wisconsin, yes, they lost Max Williams at tight end. They still have their quarterback, Matt Linder, I think. He was rather impressive down here against Nebraska last year. I can only imagine that he's going to be just as good for this season. I don't know what Minnesota lost.
David Cobb, their running back. One of the best running backs in the Big Ten.
And they lost
Max Williams. They still have their quarterback, and I can't think of his name.
Matt Linder.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's what I'm pretty certain it's Matt Linder.
Okay, it could be.
But anyways.
But I don't think that their quarterback can do it by himself.
Do they have other weapons, though?
No, I don't think so. They didn't really have it last year. Max Williams and David Cobb were just that good, along with the quarterback position. It was just that good. Those three really had a flow going to them. The offensive line, some big Minnesota farm kids, I'm sure, on that offensive line. That helps, but, granted, they're basically playing the same exact defensive line that they played last year. But this defensive line is even more improved than they were before. Like, they have really improved, so it's going to be a tough battle. I think that it could go either way. This game I'm worried about.
Yeah.
Because if you do beat Wisconsin in that dogfight, how much are you going to have left to go to Minnesota and win that game?
Because let's not forget, and I told you this the other night, there is no break for Nebraska until November.
Right.
You are going straight through from September 5th all the way to November 14th before you get a break in between the 14th and the Iowa game on the 27th. So if you use up a lot, you have to play your cards right. You got to conserve the fuel. If you're going to use it up all against Wisconsin, how are you going to have enough the next weekend to go up against Minnesota? And then the week after that, Northwestern at Memorial Stadium, and then at Purdue, and then Michigan State.
With Minnesota's their cornerbacks, Eric Murray, and I don't know how to pronounce his first name. I think it's just Brian Body Calhoun. Both those guys, lockdown, shut down, cornerbacks. They're going to pretty much
force Nebraska to do a run game.
Yeah,
They
the passing
did lose,
game.
Now I was thinking about that. They did lose that defensive. I think he's a D tackle. He went to the NFL, and I cannot think of his name, but he came on strong, especially when they played Nebraska.
I think I remember that.
Is like, I want to say Rashad something, but that is a big loss for them too, because they didn't really have that great of a defense. They were just playing with all-out grit, emotion, winning for Jerry Kill, doing all that stuff, hardcore, just being a up-front, in-your-face defense. That's how they won games. And I don't know, and I hate to say this, but, Jerry Kill, God forbid it happens, but he have another, episode with his seizures. I don't know if if he doesn't have one of those, if he can still instill that emotion into those players, and
maybe
I hope it doesn't happen.
them.
Maybe he can. Maybe he can. I love Jerry Kill. He's a great coach.
Absolutely.
One of the best coaches in the Big Ten, because Minnesota was one of those teams that was a dumpster fire before he came there.
Right.
And with his medical issues, it's hard to say it, but his medical issues really turned around that team. They instilled something in them that they didn't have before. And if he can continue doing that, they could probably win the Big Ten West.
That's
And
why
it's
I'm
scary.
thinking.
Yeah,
That's why I'm thinking. I think this might be Nebraska's first loss. I really do. I don't know, Brent. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's either Wisconsin. I think they'll drop either Wisconsin or Minnesota. I don't know which one they'll win. Maybe if things continue as they have the past couple of times against Wisconsin and they lose, then maybe that lights a bit of a fire under Nebraska and they come out and elevate their game against Minnesota. Like you said, if they burn everything against Wisconsin, what do you have left against Minnesota? It's on the road, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, so that makes it tough.
Not a friendly environment.
Since I picked them to win the Wisconsin game at home, I'll say that they do lose their first game.
So at this point, we have Nebraska at 6-1, middle of October. Now the Huskers come back home to host Northwestern after going to Evanston last fall and just absolutely demolishing the Wildcats.
Yeah.
No close play required the fourth time after the first three. So now Northwestern comes back to the site of the Hail Mary.
Yes.
After Nebraska went to Evanston and kicked the teeth in of the Wildcats. So I mean, at this point with
Northwestern,
Northwestern,
something personal there, isn't there, Ryan?
Yeah, I guess
Our treatment by Northwestern fans.
Yeah, actually, that was a little bit better. They were better than Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
But anyways, I think this is a win. What does Northwestern have left as far as the years where they had success?
Right.
Especially with them, I believe they announced who their starting quarterback was, and I think it's a freshman.
Is it?
So he hasn't had any experience playing. Maybe he could change it around, but they don't have the talent that they did with Kane Coulter, Trevor Siemian, any of those
guys are gone.
They're all gone. And
with their wide receivers are
they
gone.
do have a good running back, though. And
that's right. And
I can't think of his name. He really came on the scene last year.
Oh, Jackson.
Is that what his name is?
Yeah,
what's his first name?
Trayvon Jackson. I think. No, that's not right. That's the Wisconsin basketball player. But it is Jackson.
Yeah.
I know that.
He was the talent. Yeah.
And that could be a bright spot for him. But I don't see him having anything
not
to
against
beat
Nebraska's defense,
especially
not against
at home.
Defensive line.
If Nebraska's 7-1 going into Northwestern, or 6-1 going into Northwestern, fans are going to be excited for Nebraska football still.
Yeah,
I mean one loss is going to be painful, but I don't see Northwestern beating.
No, I think
Justin Jackson.
Jackson,
that's what it is,
Yeah, very good running back.
Mm-hmm.
Solomon Vault is also still there too.
Yeah.
See, this is the thing: is if there is going to be a danger, it's going to come from Justin Jackson, and it's going to come from some of their wide receivers. I see Miles Schuler is still on here. I think Christian Jones was another guy who was a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't think Dan Vitale is there anymore. I think he's gone. So maybe not. Maybe they are working with Cameron Dickerson is there, but that's not
they're
as
depleted
strong.
as compared to previous years. Yeah,
so,
they got Jackson at running back, but really, they got maybe two guys that you need to worry about, and the rest are, non-factors. And if you got a freshman at quarterback, he's gonna have a tough time going from playing in Evanston where you got like 15,000 fans or whatever.
That might be how many show up to the games there.
Yeah,
because the rest are Nebraska fans when we go.
Right, exactly. Coming to a place where you're dealing with 90,000.
Yeah.
Of the opposing team's fans, so they're gonna have a rough time. I think Nebraska wins that one handily.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, up next.
At 7-1?
Yes, 7-1. Nebraska, figuratively thinking, and speaking, I guess, goes into Purdue. Now, Purdue put up a fight last year against the Huskers, but Nebraska came out. They won that game. What was it, 31-27? 35-14, I think. 35-14.
Yeah.
So
I see something similar again.
Yeah.
Again,
it's at Purdue.
It's later in the year. It's on the road. They may not, people say each week, you don't look forward to certain games and you don't let down for certain games. I don't think that's true. I think that's the kind of game that, again, Purdue might even start off strong and maybe score the first points or something like that. But I think by the end of the third quarter, Nebraska has that game won.
Now, Austin Appleby will be returning for Purdue, so that's their returning quarterback. But I mean, other than that,
weapons.
Yeah, no. Exactly. Yeah. What was even the weapons that Purdue had last year?
I don't know.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
didn't have any. They haven't had weapons in a while.
The thing about this game, though, I believe the next game we haven't got to yet is Michigan State.
That's correct. But let's jump to that. Do we agree a win against Purdue at Purdue?
I think
but
so.
I'm just saying you can't look past Purdue to Michigan State.
Right.
Then that's going to be the biggest thing. Because
isn't that ironic that he says that after we just said want to get to Michigan State, overlooking Purdue?
But
we just overlooked Purdue.
You overlooked him, and I don't like it.
I'm sorry, Devin.
But Purdue...
Good thing we're not playing.
Mm-hmm.
Purdue has some talent. They can push teams. They can make them really think about overlooking Purdue University. But it's probably going to be a cakewalk for Nebraska, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mike Riley's going to have them, ready for that game to play. Not much of a talent, but I'm just saying, do not overlook Purdue to get to Michigan State.
Yeah,
right.
That's fair. We decided to win, so Nebraska at this point is 8-1, I think. Yeah, somehow
in the top 20.
Yes,
probably in the top 17 to 15.
Probably, yeah, somewhere around there. And so that means another test at Memorial Stadium.
Yeah,
probably under the lights.
Here's the one
on ABC, ESPN, or ESPN2. Michigan State with Connor Cook coming back, who is
as good as he's ever going to be in college.
2-0, I think. Yes, 2-0 against Nebraska now.
Yep.
What do you think?
It's the second loss.
They still have Michigan State still has defensive players there who have experience.
Yep.
Connor Cook, we saw last year. He had weapons that you really didn't, that you knew about would be dangerous. He utilized them, and it hurt Nebraska. But both of those weapons are now gone.
Yes.
So the question becomes, all right, what is at Connor Cook's disposal now? How can he utilize the weapons he has? Now, granted, we're entering November now. He's going to have a whole bunch of games to develop playing time with his receivers, with his running back, communication with his O-line. Mm-hmm. He's going to have something set up.
Right.
So Nebraska will know who are the guys that he relies on.
It's the same situation like at Nebraska. Like you said, these guys like Brandon Riley and these other receivers and stuff that didn't necessarily have the time. They're going to be good players. Michigan State recruits talented players. Mm-hmm. So they have the talent there. Like you said, it's going to be November. They're going to have 8 games by now to have developed that. They're gonna be dangerous. Mm-hmm. I just think that the defense is still is too talented. Now you never know. It's a new year, and Michigan State may not be. Even if they have a lot of talent returning and they have some of the same names, they may not be as good. But it just seems like the Nebraska way almost to lose this game, mm-hmm. Almost like an inferiority complex. Mm-hmm. That they didn't have in the past, mm-hmm. that maybe now, after the last 7 years of winning every other game except these ones, and maybe Mike Riley has gotten rid of that attitude and that atmosphere, but even at home, you think I think it's going to be a close game, mm-hmm. and I think Nebraska can definitely has the potential to win this, mm-hmm. and they could even win it handily. They could win by 10, 14 points.
That
or something
defense
like that.
could shut down those new weapons for Connor Cook.
And it's a slow game. It's a war of attrition where you just it's a lot of defense. It's going to be a lot of defense. That's for sure. It's not going to be high scoring. Mm-hmm. I think if a team hits 30, they win that game.
Mm-hmm.
I see this somewhere around the 21-24 type of mark.
Kind of like last year's score a little bit.
Yep, pretty much. And I just think that they're going to drop it.
Yeah, I have to agree, Devin.
This game is one of those games, Nebraska has a little bit of a chip on their shoulder at this game as well.
Yeah, that's true.
They could have won the game last year in East Lansing. They
should have.
At the end of the game, they
Right.
could have won this game.
Yeah.
One drop pass away, they could have won it.
Right.
They had DeMornay return a couple of punts. One back for a touchdown, one. They got a pretty nice return out of it.
Right.
This
Now,
will be
he should be back by now, too.
if they
what
let
they're
him
saying.
play throughout the rest of the year.
Right.
We don't know if he's going to be back in shape in time. I don't know. He should be.
True.
He should be, but we don't know. I think that you'll find out how good of a coach Mike Riley is in this game. Because Nebraska fired Bo for not winning the big games.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Wisconsin, yeah, it's a big game.
It's a big game. But
Yeah.
not
Wisconsin's
like
a big game. Minnesota, yeah, I'd consider that a big game now.
It is.
Because they're in our division. Michigan State, they're not in our division, but it's still a Big Ten game.
Yeah. They'll be ranked.
Nebraska needs to beat this team. Especially, I think they're preseason ranked number 5 in the country.
Michigan State.
I think that's what it was.
I'm going to check that out. And
They're somewhere up there, yeah.
They were high.
they are very high up there. Yeah.
And which I was a little surprised at them being that high.
That high, yeah, that is high.
But
I was surprised that Auburn was number 2.
Michigan State is number 5.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm on the fence about this game. I don't want to say a win or loss because I don't want to curse this game. I don't want to do it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And I didn't say anything about the Minnesota game because I'm on the fence about that game.
Uh-huh.
But if Nebraska can come into this game looking like they are little kids in a candy store full of energy, playing hard mouth, hit them right in the chin strap,
Grinded out football.
grinded out football, they win this game. And that's why I think that Nebraska, I want to say it, but I don't want to say it. Nebraska wins this game.
Wow.
Really?
I think they win that game. And
Okay.
I think they win that by 7 or more points.
Wow.
Really?
Wow.
Okay.
Look, I don't think that that's a far-fetched thing, especially at home. I think both of these teams, you got to see, and particularly with Nebraska, and it seems like it's this way every year, but, you look at the talent, but based on past experience that they don't always live up to the talent level. So again, if it's like that this year, I think they lose that game. If Mike Riley has changed the culture and the atmosphere, and those guys are playing up to their potential, I think they can win that game. But just based on past experience, I gotta go with a loss.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that because I don't want to curse Nebraska football. I love Nebraska football. But just think about this for a moment. If Nebraska, what game is that? What number game is that?
Number 9, right?
I think so.
Or
yes.
is it 10? No, it'd be 10.
It is 6, 7, 8, 9. Game
9.
number 9.
It is 9.
That's
okay.
game number 9. So if Nebraska is 8-0 entering that game, just hypothetical here.
Right.
How nice would that be to have game day back in Lincoln?
Oh, yeah.
Goodness.
Because it could be here for Wisconsin. It could be. It might not be.
Yeah.
Nebraska always usually gets the...
They'll find another game that probably isn't even as
they'll probably
good. But
find, like, I don't know, Jacksonville State School of the Blind and North Dakota State playing each other, which you can't knock North Dakota State because they're good.
yeah,
But Nebraska usually always gets nudged out of that spot.
right.
But if that was the case, Nebraska undefeated, Nebraska football back, Michigan State, I don't know what their schedule's like.
Well,
Yeah.
hold on. Let's see, because
potentially undefeated.
right now there could these are the possibilities of games that I know where game day is going to be. LSU, Alabama.
Oh, see, we always get the
Sorry.
shaft.
LSU,
Nebraska.
Alabama. I'm telling you right now, that's where that's
Now,
where they're going to be.
hey, Alabama's down a bit. And,
You know what?
You've got Arkansas, Old Miss. They could be at Florida State, Clemson,
oh, they'll be at that one. if
Arizona,
not.
USC.
I was just gonna say there's probably like Florida State
Yeah.
Clemson game. I was about to say that, and they are.
That's
It's just Nebraska always gets a shaft.
Yeah,
I
there's
know.
no way they're gonna
But
be
if
here.
Nebraska is undefeated, Michigan State's click on Michigan State and see what their schedule's like. See what theirs is. Looks like. They do have Oregon.
They have Oregon.
Yep.
They have, pretty much.
So, I mean, Oregon's their toughest test, maybe besides Michigan.
Kind of a depleted Oregon team a little bit.
Yep,
a little bit.
Michigan will give them a run for their money, probably just because it's that rivalry there. But you think about it, both those teams undefeated by the time that game rolls around.
Yeah.
How can you go against Nebraska and Michigan State undefeated teams?
Yeah, it would be tough.
Certainly possible.
They could find a way, though.
I wish game day would come back to Lincoln, but it's just we get the shaft.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. Finally, Rutgers and Iowa. Nebraska goes to Piscataway, New Jersey to take on the Scarlet Knights.
Not a cakewalk.
On November 14th. Exactly, yes. I still think Nebraska is going to win that game.
Yeah.
I don't really see any possible challenges that Rutgers would have in any way. I mean, they lost their starting quarterback in the middle of the first game,
Right.
In Lincoln. So, I mean, maybe Rutgers will be good at that time.
I think they'll put up more of a fight.
This is Nebraska's last game before they finally get a break.
Yeah.
Before the week before the Iowa game. So maybe this will be like a Wisconsin scenario where Nebraska has to take on Rutgers on the road, and they might be just completely out of gas and fatigued.
Or
It could drop that way.
Or they might be like, okay, let's get through this with everything we got, because then we get to relax for a bit.
And I think that's probably what it's going to be. They're going to put everything out there. They're going to get a Saturday off. Be 8-2 going into the week off, and then after that Iowa. I think Nebraska wins this game against Rutgers.
I think they win the last two games.
Yeah,
without a problem.
I think so too. If we all agree on Rutgers, jump to Iowa. I think
they beat Iowa too.
I think they
Although I think they only beat them like 17-14 just to scare everyone.
Well, that's usually what it's been in the past couple of years. Nail biter games. That it's like how is this a nail biter game? Yet that's basically what it's ended up being. All 4 years Nebraska has played Iowa. Last year overtime. The year before Iowa won at Memorial Stadium. But the 2 years prior to that, low-scoring games. So it is probably going to end up being a close one. So with that said, upon further review, I guess you should say, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 2, Nebraska goes in the regular season. So that means the minimum number of games that they could lose would be 2. Or excuse me, the maximum number of games they could lose outside of the regular season if they go to the Big Ten championship game and go to a bowl game, which by these standards, they'll definitely go to a bowl game.
Right.
The maximum number of games they could lose is 2 more. That would put them at 4, but that gives them 9 wins. Right. That's the same thing as Bo Pelini.
Exactly. But then you got to factor in, well, what if they lose to Wisconsin and Minnesota and Michigan State? Well, then
that's why there's different ranges, but we're going off of realistic expectations that we all think, and this is what we've crunched out here. 9-2.
Well, I think they're 9-2 or 8-3, somewhere in there. And then if they're 8-3, though, they're not going to get that Big Ten championship.
I totally agree.
So I think they hit right where they've been hitting the whole time.
In Mike Riley's first year.
Yeah, on the low end, they go 8 and it would be 4. And on the high end, they go it would be 11 and 2. So 8-4 to 11-2.
11-2, 12-1.
I don't think they go 12.
I don't think so either. But there's certainly a possibility 11-2.
I think they fall somewhere in between. I think most likely I think they get 9. Just based on the past few years. If Riley struggles because it's the first year and stuff, they get 8. If he exceeds expectations, they get 10.
Simple as
Best
that.
case scenario, they get 11. And that's great. Who could complain? Well, there are plenty of people who can complain.
There's always people who complain. There's probably us who are going to complain. Who knows?
I'm not going to complain.
I'm not either.
Anything 9 and up, I'm not complaining.
Mike Riley's first year, he goes 9-2, potentially 9-3, 10-2.
This is just the first year. And it's a pretty easy schedule. I think we got to admit.
Tougher games are at home.
Exactly.
It
Yeah,
nicer. Sets
yeah.
up
So
nicer.
it's a little bit easier than some previous years. So
It could set up Nebraska's way in the far extreme category that they go undefeated in the regular season because of the easier games on the road.
yeah,
Difficult games at home.
I think we've got like a 1% chance.
Yeah,
of that.
that's the extreme end. That's the extreme end of things.
1% chance.
We'll definitely see what happens. Nebraska and BYU this weekend. Husker Countdown pregame show hosted by Brent Bonfleur on 90.3 KRNU
Yes.
will begin 75 minutes before kickoff, which is at 2:30. So you'll be on the air at roughly 1:15, 1:20, somewhere around there.
Yep.
And be
Depends
sure to
on
tune in.
how everyone else is running.
Oh, exactly, yeah, and how the stadium clock runs.
Right, exactly.
But be sure to
they're
tune in
behind, we're
to
behind.
Brent and the Husker Countdown KRNU sports staff.
Yep.
Should be good stuff. Devon Kleich, we'll see you next week, buddy, and
yeah.
hopefully we'll be discussing and analyzing a win and looking forward to the next game against South Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for your time, bud.
Yep.
All right, special edition of the Route podcast style for Husker football talk. I'm Ryan Swanigan, Brent Bonfleur, Devon Kleich. We will do this again on our next time that we're producing another Husker football talk podcast.
Yeah.
We'll see you then.
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 Yeah.
We'll